Joe here from the Working Fans Podcast. And at the Working Fans Podcast, this is just a podcast that three lifelong fans created to have a place to talk comedy and pro wrestling. Now, our comedy podcast releases every Tuesday, while our wrestling podcast releases every Thursday. We release bonus episodes under the moniker Working Fans Presents every now and then. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, any major podcast provider. The important thing is just please like, rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to us. Now, we have started a new thing. We are now on Amazon and Audible. So those episodes release every Monday. And that's kind of going through the archives and just releasing our old episodes in a new area. So if you want to live through the process with us again, take that journey with us again, you can find us over on Amazon and Audible. Now, if you can't get enough of us in the audio form, check out our YouTube. It's youtube.com/C/Working Fans Wrestling Pod, or just search Working Fans Podcast on YouTube. We have the whole archive is up there. And if you listen to the Working Fans Podcast, you are more than familiar with the 531. That is our signature segment where we take your top 5 lists on a particular subject, vote it down to a top 3, and then debate it down to a top 1. Now, guys, if you want to hear 3 guys talk shit about comedy, wrestling, life, anything, you will enjoy the Working Fans Podcast. Fans, welcome back for another week of Working Fans Saturdays. Dave, how you doing? Sound like you got a little cough.
A little cough, a little live action. My COVID is flaring up, baby. I don't know what to tell you.
Now, first off, happy Father's Day. Second off, much like our dads, AJ isn't going to be here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Ain't seen that guy since last Saturday. Actually, I can't say that. He made a brief cameo when we recorded this Thursday's wrestling episode with CM Punk. He was in and out. He was on the road trying to get that pizza, I guess, that he promised us. This
is actually the first time we've had the live show since last Saturday. And I me personally, I know I had mixed feelings going into the show. I'm like, shit, I hope it's funny. I'm going to feel bad if he's like wearing our logo and looking like shit. And he rocked those 30 people in the Elks Club, and he really found his niche. So I think as the summer progresses, he'll probably be doing more shows, and we will probably be there with him. Check out the Daryl Rosemont interview. We've got Marcelino Moose Hill coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, Chris Zaucha is currently putting his son down for a nap, so he will be joining us soon. So Dave, before the show, we were talking about last night's Dynamite, and you said you enjoyed the MMA fight.
Yeah, I thought it was different. Yeah, I mean, obviously it wasn't legit. It was still pro wrestling. But, I mean, I thought they were pretty true to a lot of elements. The walkouts looked legit. They had the 5-minute time and, even the footwork, they were trying to work a little bit like an MMA fight. Obviously there's certain things. You got to sell a certain way and do certain things still. But I appreciated the effort. I thought it was one of the better different things. And it gave last night's show kind of a different feel. Because overall, I thought, it's not their fault. Maybe it was scheduling. But, with no fans, after having the fans back all the time now, it was a little like, this is not what I wanted for an episode.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what threw me off about that fight, because that gimmick has followed Jake Hager. He did it in MLW. They had like a cage fight in a gym.
Yeah.
And I love it when Bloodsport does it. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, I didn't enjoy it as much, and I was wondering if it's because I'm not as much of an MMA fan. Would not being a fan help me enjoy it, or would it work against me? It sounds like you being a fan, you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I didn't think about Bloodsport though. If you compare it to Bloodsport at all, no, it doesn't compare to Bloodsport. But Bloodsport is like the absolute best at bringing the hybrid of MMA and pro wrestling together. I think, yeah, the fact that I'm an MMA fan though did help because little things like I said, just a 5-minute clock and the way they walked out, stuff they don't necessarily do in Bloodsport, like with the cornerman, was very, very like I saw the effort there. I guess I appreciated it. You know.
And I think to really make that work, you have to go all in on that and have those little kind of details that to make it seem as real as possible.
That punch off the cage Wardlow did too is actually one of the more famous things in an MMA fight too. A guy named Anthony Pettis, Showtime does that, and he's also famous for doing a kick off the cage too, back in the day. So they took a little, even though that looked a little wrestly, that was actually something that has happened before. So.
Yeah, now speaking of MMA, we got the Combat Cast coming out next Saturday. Be aware of now what? Comedy, wrestling, MMA, 3 days a week, 4 if you count this show. We're really branching out there. Really, growing.
Man. I don't even know what's going to be next, but I will think of something. Maybe Love Line, Producer Joe and Man They Call Dave give you love advice.
Oof, that could be dangerous.
What to do or what not to do.
I hope the board sticks around so we're able to do our real life podcast.
Yeah, he ain't going nowhere. He's great.
Now I see we got the Black Chick Thriller. Chris Zaucha is in the back room right now.
All right.
I'm gonna wait to Adam, see when he gets in frame.
Yeah, cool, man. Don't get him on here like snorting cocaine or something. Let him.
No, he's a respectable father and family man. And the reason we wanted to have him on is one, my dad wasn't a big wrestling fan. So as far as a Father's Day episode, I can really just say like he taught me technology early. So like I got comfortable with computers and it helps to be able to do what we do here. I think he would get a kick out of that. I'm pursuing something I like. But other than that, he never really watched wrestling. He might sit down to watch it, but he wouldn't say shit about it. Most of the time, he'd be like, yeah, I'm not a fan. So
you're doing that, watching that fake bullshit for us, son.
I put on the Japanese stuff thinking like, oh, he'll love this. And it didn't go over as planned. Now, I'm going to bring in Chris.
I fought those guys in the war.
He did fight the Cubans, but Chris, it's finally nice to meet you face to face. How you doing, brother?
What's up, guys? Can you hear me okay? Am I sound fine?
Yeah,
you sound good.
Okay. All right. I sounded the last time I was on. When I went back and listened to the show, it was really it was not your guys' fault. My fault was horrible. So hopefully you guys can hear me all right.
Oh, yeah. We got better recording equipment now. That was like a year ago, and it's wild how far we have come just with how we record. Yeah. I mean, we got a lot of big guests early. We were able to get friends of the show on, like you, Josh Dunn, Jesse from New Hampshire, Randy, and then that slowed down with COVID. So
was this during COVID we talked to you too, Chris?
What's that?
Was this during COVID we talked to you too?
Yeah.
It
was right when it started because we were crazy at work with people buying all the toilet paper and stuff. So right. and now I can't get rid of it. It's like, oh, now I guess nobody wipes their butt anymore. They're like, I don't need it anymore.
And now it's just
around that dirty ass.
Exactly.
And it's wild because now sometime, or for a little while, it was the fight over the face mask. People coming in without a face mask, like, hey, who the fuck are you? That was before even vaccinations.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I'm like, even like there was one customer that didn't have a mask on. And I told the cashier, I'm like, don't even ring him up. Don't ring him up. He needs to get out of the store. And which is hilarious. I am not like that. I let people do whatever they want. And my store manager comes up. He's like, we can't really do that. I'm like, all right. So anybody comes without a mask, I'm like, do you need a mask? They're like, nope. I'm like, okay. I don't know what their situation is. Maybe they put on a mask and they drop dead. It's not for me to say. So I'm just like, okay, whatever. You know what? I'm wearing a mask.
And it's such a weird thing because it's a law. But then when they come into your building, you're not allowed to ask them. You can only friendly provide a mask. And if they don't want it, you can fuck off. And that's the thing. It's tough situation.
Exactly. And honestly, like, very few customers throughout this whole COVID thing, I've had very few assholes. They've all been understanding. Even the ones that don't have masks, I tell them, like, hey, do you need a mask? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. Because I don't get paid enough to argue with people about wearing a mask. And even if I did get paid enough, I still wouldn't argue with them. It's like, well, whatever. Okay, that's fine. I don't care.
I like that.
I had a mask on, so I felt safe. So
I like that there's a certain element now of people that are defiant, that are wearing the mask out of defiance now. They didn't want to wear it before, and I was like, no, we're wearing it. I'm like, okay, fuck, I don't give a fuck. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we're on here for Now we're on here.
Wait. Time out.
Shit.
I love the fucking shirt. I just want to say that. Hollywood Blonde, bringing back some memories. Yeah.
It just came in the mail yesterday. So I got it from Pro Wrestling Tees. Cheap plug. My nephew works for them now. He does bookkeeping. I don't know what he does there, inventory or something. So I feel like I have to support the family business, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I got this. I got a Gino Hernandez shirt.
Nice.
Wear tonight. And I know that's what I said. I'm like, crap, they have this. And then they have the that smut and filth shirt in the same font as Dark Side. I got that too. I'll wear that to like a family gathering or something.
We'll throw you a little like baby bribe or something. Maybe you can get these on the Wrestling Tees there.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Now we're here to talk Father's Day because most importantly, you are a father. Right. Much like me, you recently lost your dad, but your dad was more of a wrestling fan than mine. So what stories can you tell us about that? Because you like the old time wrestling, like.
Right. Well, so like when I first, and I probably talked about this on the last show, but I guarantee nobody remembers anything from the last show. So I think I'll be okay if I repeat stories. I just happened to stumble upon wrestling because my dad was just happened to be watching it. It's not anything he ever said, hey, you got to watch stuff with me, son. He just was watching TV. I come downstairs or upstairs. I mean, it's been a long time, so my story may not be accurate. But it was like, I remember it being Nick Bockwinkel against Spike Huber, but I don't think they were ever in the same place at the same time. But that's how I remember it, so that's the story I tell. So I walked downstairs and like, I remember Spike Huber bleeding, but again, I think I'm conflating stories. I don't know for sure, but that's what I remember. So I saw that. I'm like, holy crap, what is this? It never even dawned on me that it was like, not really on the level, for lack of a better term. So I just took it at face value. I was like 5. I'd never been in a fight. I don't know how do you make somebody bleed? I was like, I don't know how to punch someone in the face, So I just assumed, I guess this is what people do when they have athletic contests. They beat each other so they bleed. So I was hooked right away, and that was in '79, and I don't watch as much now, just because I don't have time. Right. It's like 3 hours for Raw. It's great. That's a long time, and that's every week.
Yeah.
And I remember Clash of the Champions being 2 hours. Like, okay, I will try to carve 2 hours out of my day to watch this every 3 months. Not 3 hours every week. And that's just Raw. That's not even counting SmackDown or AEW or Impact, or if you watch MLW or Ring of Honor or NWA. I mean, I love wrestling a lot, but my God, that's a lot of time to invest in anything. I watch all. I don't begrudge them. They like it. That's great for them. But it's like I just don't have time, especially now 3 kids, 4 dogs, and a job. I don't. I can't put that much time in it. If I watch YouTube clips, I'm like, okay, that looks cool, and then I just move on with my day. It's just too much time to dedicate to that.
If we weren't doing the podcast, I don't know how much wrestling I watch. I joke around with these guys because I think I deliver bread. So now it's truck wrestling. I got fucking shows going on my phone, and I'm just listening to like the radio days because otherwise I don't have time for all this shit. We're doing podcasts, like we're fucking working. And, fuck that. I don't have kids, thankfully, but
yeah, exactly. That's a lot of time to commit to. Where are you going? That's my wife. Are you going to bed? She's already gone. She walked away.
Thought you were cutting promo.
You know what? She's like, you know what? I've been listening to this shit for 15 years. I never want to hear the words Nick or Bockwinkel ever again.
I thought you were about to do some dad shit on camera. Like, hey, where you going with that?
No.
Don't you disrespect the good name of Spike Huber.
My son's like, Spike Huber, he's too good. I got to get out of here. Yeah, but I don't know if I could, like, if I were growing up now, I don't know if I could watch wrestling as it is. But again, I'm also looking at it through 47-year-old eyes. And I think we forget that as fans.
Sure.
Is that Vince McMahon is going, hey, what's the fat bald guy in Lake in the Hills, Illinois? What kind of wrestling does he want? He don't care. He's catering towards kids that are going to buy T-shirts and stuff.
Sure.
So even if I think it's stupid or I think it's garbage or whatever, and I don't think all of it is, some of it's good, but it's not for us anymore. It just isn't. Right. And we can either just accept that and be like, okay, well, I don't like it, or we can just try to watch it or whatever. Like I said, you just choose what you like. Not everything I watched in 1986 was phenomenal. Most of it was. 90% of it was. There was still some stuff that was garbage, you know?
And it was different too, man. Like back then, I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't the end of the world if we were bored because we didn't have a ton of other shit at our fingertips. Like now it's like, that's right. Why the fuck am I going to wait 5 minutes to just get exciting?
Yeah. I know. I think another thing too is that now I'm speaking for myself, so I don't want to speak for everybody else.
Sure.
And I have to recondition myself. I'm now conditioned to look forward to dream matches. So my buddy Lou and I were talking about, what if Brock went to AEW? And my first thought was, well, who would he work with? When really my first thought should be, right, which really my first thought should be, Brock Lesnar from AEW, that's awesome, you know?
Right.
We tend to think about it like not every match has to be great to be great, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite Cena matches, I'm a huge Cena fan. I'll be a Cena defender forever. One of my favorite matches of his was when he got squashed by Brock at SummerSlam because he did exactly what the story called for. It wasn't a bunch of great moves. It was Brock kicking the living shit out of John Cena for 15 minutes. A few hope spots, but that was it. That match was phenomenal because it got across exactly what they needed to get across, that Brock was an unstoppable monster. And he managed to not only conquer The Undertaker, but he conquered basically the Hogan of this generation, for lack of a better term. So that was great stuff. I thought. That's just my opinion.
I know one thing I got a kick out of. Joe just reminded me of it. I'm curious. I'm looking at your shirt, and then he said Brock. I know he's talking about Brock Anderson debuted for AEW last night. That's an interesting thing to me now to be at this age where we're watching guys, the sons that we used to watch wrestle, right? Like, Pillman Jr., Brock Anderson. Yeah. I'm like
Dominic Mysterio.
Yeah,
sure.
It's cool, but you also feel a little old at the same time, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. Because I was thinking about, because I used to buy shoot interviews all the time from Rob Feinstein before we heard about Rob Feinstein.
Shout out to Rob Feinstein.
Shout out to RF.
That dude money.
You know what? There's so many scumbags in pro wrestling. I can't just hate him. So it's okay, you did something you shouldn't have done. I'm never going to, so I don't care. The funny thing was, I was thinking about the shoot interview that Rey Mysterio did with Rob Feinstein over 20 years ago, and his little kid Dominic was in the video. He's like a baby. I'm like, oh my God, this kid's like, he's an actual wrestler now. It's like, my God, we're just seeing even for me, like when I was watching Randy Orton after watching his dad, I'm like, oh my God, dude. And at that time, I was in my 30s. I'm like, shit, I'm old. Holy crap. Mm-hmm. Now I'm really getting old. It's great, though. I don't care, whatever.
Yeah. With Rock's daughter is wrestling in development NXT. So that's Rocky Johnson's granddaughter now.
Isn't that,
holy shit.
Seriously. Yep.
Because when you talk about your memories, I was same thing, 4 or 5 years old, and I'm 44. So I don't know what, our ages are. Yeah. And I remember Rocky Johnson. One of the earliest memories was just seeing him do the shuffle and the drop kick.
Yep.
Right.
Sure.
So it's like, oh man, that guy's, grandkids wrestling. That's
and
awesome.
That was grandkids wrestling. Yeah, that's crazy. It's just, and that's the thing is we're still watching it. We're still to some degree, not as much, but I know who's champion. I'm kind of caught up on stuff. I love Lashley. I know a lot of people don't think he's great because his maybe not the best professional wrestler of all time, but he's really big, black, and scary, which for me that's all A pluses on the report card. And he's an impressive looking guy.
Yeah.
And with MVP as his mouthpiece, that's awesome. He's MVP's really, in my opinion, really underrated as a talker. I've always thought he was awesome on the mic.
There's
still good stuff out there. Yeah, for sure. And why they broke up the Hurt? Yeah, why they broke up the not the beatdown club, the Hurt Business, same thing basically. Why they broke up the Hurt Business blows my mind. It's like, God, can you imagine with Heyman on one side, you got Roman and the Usos against the Hurt Business with MVP as at Survivor Series.
Yeah, one off.
It's it's like, my gosh, the promos would be worth. I don't care if the match is crap. The promos would be amazing. you know.
Yeah.
And then Survivor Series, who cares? Have Roman's team win. I mean, who gives a crap? It's Survivor Series, and clearly they don't give a shit about who wins or loses. So what difference, you know?
What
There
you
was
guys?
a Black Horseman there for a minute, like, and looking powerful. The best any black tag team has looked in the WWE.
I don't get it. I don't understand. And I'm guessing that maybe just like I pretend to know what goes on backstage at WWE because they're not asking for my opinion on stuff. But I have to guess that maybe Vince just lost interest because he's kind of that way, where he'll really push something and then he's just like, I don't do it anymore. And I kind of understand because I'm the same way.
Sure.
Just in my everyday life, I'm like, I don't want to be on a podcast today. Not you guys, but just in general. I'm like,
And this is like not like I think it's constructive criticism. I don't know. It's a theory too, but with no fans, you're kind of on your own. So we're kind of Vince is kind of like trying these different things, and he's not getting a loud reaction feedback.
Right, I can't fault them. And if they're just going on Twitter, although if they go on Twitter, they're probably getting a lot of pro.
They're gonna get nothing.
Yeah, exactly. They get people that just have. They're just some of the stuff I see people complain about. I'm like, you put more thought into this fucking fake ass wrestling. And I love wrestling. Don't get me wrong. More thought into this wrestling than I have in over 40 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, why would he do this? It's like, well, because it's not real. That's why he would do it. Do you watch Spider-Man and go, why is he shooting webs? It's not fucking real.
Yeah.
It's not. There has to be some believability and consistency. I agree with that, but I'm not going to sit there and overanalyze pro wrestling or any form of entertainment. It's just I don't have time.
I think
I'm their target. I'm their target market because I'll buy any bullshit they sell me. Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll sign up for the network again. I don't care.
I think Thor's hammer might be a work. I don't know.
You think which one's a work?
I said I think Thor's hammer might be a work. I don't know.
It wasn't. No, it's only a work when Captain America picks it up. Right. That's a total shoot.
They're working.
Exactly.
Now, Chris, did your dad still watch wrestling, and what did he think of the modern product as compared to the stuff that like you grew up on and before?
So he had macular degeneration, which had nothing to do with what he died from, but like his eyesight just got progressively worse and worse every year. The last wrestler that he really got into was Kevin Owens. When he first came to the main roster, he became a fan of his, which is hilarious because it's like Kevin Owens is not like an impressive looking guy. But I think he liked, and maybe that's why he liked it because he was kind of almost a throwback to what he watched in the 60s and 70s. You know, I'm not saying he's like Dick the Bruiser, but he's certainly not a body guy.
Right.
And he's just kind of like a like raw bone wrestler or whatever you want to call him. My dad liked him. He liked Roman. As much as he could still watch and enjoy, he would watch. He was never, and this is where I used to get mad on, I'm not going to say, I don't want to name Facebook groups. I don't want anybody to get mad at me. It's not BTT, though, just for the record. When AEW was first starting, and like everybody in the world was saying, oh, it's going to be fucking stupid. Fucking outlaw mode show. Blah, blah, blah. And I love Cornette. I'm not knocking. He's my favorite of all time. But I'm like, and my dad was pumped for it because he's like, well, it's more wrestling. Right. And I would say to people, I'm like, listen, my dad watched Lou Thesz. He didn't watch Lou Thesz like it's Circle K. Like he saw what Lou Thesz actually wrestled, and he's excited. So why don't you stop listening to Jim Cornette for a couple days and listen? If you don't like it, you're perfectly welcome to not like it. But at least let them show you something before you're like, oh, this sucks. Or this sucks. And I'm not a big Omega fan, but at least let them show you what they can do. And then if you don't like it, then say I don't like it. But at least let them try. That's where I would get frustrated. It's like, you guys are allegedly wrestling fans, and all you do is shit on wrestling.
Yeah.
All the time. It's like, I even watch. Well, I watched it in the old days. Well, okay. Well, then what are you doing in here? Then go to an old days group. Whatever. I don't care.
I'm a big Cornette fan, but I feel like that's one drawback is sometimes being a fan of his, you have to listen to that negativity about AEW. Some things he's right about, but I think it's also in his nature to just pile up on it. And sometimes the fans follow suit, and that's what's tough for me, at least.
Right, and he also will, and that's the thing. You only hear like clips, like if you go on, like unless you listen to the whole show, which I don't really, because I already listen to too many fucking podcasts. I just don't have time. But there are clips, or there's audio or whatever of him saying, here's what AEW did right, blah, blah, blah. And he's hard on the stuff they do wrong. He's hard on NXT too. It's not just AEW beats up, but that's what people are drawn to. So they just get it like in sound bites. They hear Outlaw Mud Show Jazz, balding buck, blah, blah, oh, you sucks. It's like, listen to the other stuff he's talking about, because the other stuff he may be putting over. Not a lot of it, but he does. And Cornette was my dad's favorite manager ever, and mine too. So I have because Cornette has been involved in pro wrestling, he can say whatever he wants. That's my opinion. When other people that like really they don't do anything athletically whatsoever have the nerve to be like, oh, the young bucks are so small. I'm like, dude, you're fat. What are you talking about? Who are you? And they're in shape. I mean, it's not like they're like, you can tell they at least go to the gym, sort of. I mean, they're not muscle heads, but they're in wrestling shape. I mean, they're fine. They're not big, but neither were the Midnights or the Rock and Roll Express. They were, and I love all Midnight Express, my favorite tag team of all time. I love all those guys. And when I was a kid, I never watched, like, look at Roddy Garvin's like 3'2", right?
Yeah.
When I watched wrestling as a youngster, even today, I never looked at it as, oh, that guy's small. Because they never presented them like that. Roddy Garvin, go in the ring and take living shit out of you for 4 minutes and then pin you. And I just went along with it. Yeah. Roddy Garvin's awesome. He's another one that he's very underrated, in my opinion. People that say, like, him winning the NWA belt was bad. It's like, no, he held it for like 2 months. It was fine. He was fine. He didn't do anything wrong.
As a kid, I loved it. I remember it was such a surprise.
Me too.
Because it was like he seemed like the middle of the pack guy fighting with Toe, and like, whoa, they put the belt on him, and then it was like, okay, we have another main event player. Yeah, I used to get excited about that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think now people tend to, like, when they watch wrestling, they try to put themselves in like they put a promoter's hat on. It's like, look, you're not the promoter. So don't worry about it. Like, if I go to McDonald's, I don't say, oh, come in the McRib now. It's like, no, just whatever. What are you doing?
We're all ratings experts, too.
I don't look at the demo. Why would I look at the demo? I have other things to do. I don't care about the wrestling demo. Again, Vince McMahon and Tony Khan have not called me one time and said, hey, you have any creative ideas? So I don't have any to give. I don't care. I don't care. You know,
I think the big question is when you go to Walmart, do you like get mad at how they merchandise their shelves? Like, look at that. You can't even pull the baked beans forward. Like, I know you got
embarrassed. Their end caps are atrocious. It's embarrassing. What is this outlaw mud show? Pallet drop bullshit. I do that. Like at Walmart, I'm like,
it's kind of hard when you're in the managerial position. You're outside, look at these cart pushers. Who's letting them smoke cigarettes while pushing like 3 carts?
Exactly. But again, just like I said, we are in the grocery/retail business, so we can say that and we can speak to it. You know, we can't be like outlaw mode show when we don't do any wrestling. It's like, I watch wrestling, so I'm an expert now. Well, okay. I don't know if that works that way, but okay.
Now, what's even more important is you're a dad. So, do your kids watch wrestling? Are they into it?
Nope. It's funny because, like, Joe's like, okay, can we talk about our dads now? Because you're talking about outlaw mode shows. I don't care. No, I'm taking them to.
I try and steer the ship a little bit.
That's why you're here. I'm taking them tonight. I don't know the name of the promotion. It's like MWA, and I'm sure it's probably their first show they've ever done. But it's like 20
Wrestling Association.
Exactly. Maybe it's like 20 minutes from my house. Christopher Daniels will be there, and so is Lance Archer. Okay,
nice.
Well, I don't know any of the other people. I'm like, well, whatever. It's like, so I'm going, the kids, and then another buddy of mine that's in a couple of the Facebook groups. He lives in Chicago. He's far from me, but he's not far from me. So we're going to meet
Jaworski far.
He's not Jaworski far. I actually messaged Jaworski the other day, asked if he was going to go to the Florida Fan Fest in November. He's like, no. I'm like, okay.
And then there was a Judas Priest meetup, I believe you talked about too.
Yeah, he said something about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going there because we got tickets. We're gonna go see him in Rosemont, which is close to Chicago. My wife's actually going. I think it's my wife, my daughter, and I think. But yeah, tickets are not cheap. Like I saw Priest, Sabbath with Dio, Priest, Sabbath, Motorhead, and Testament, like in 2008 for like $10.
Oh shit!
Jeez, and that's a lineup too.
Yeah, three of my favorite bands. My favorite band of all time, Motorhead, and the other two are like one of my favorite bands. And now I'm paying $90 a ticket to go see Judas Priest. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess inflation.
Yeah,
COVID.
Yeah, they know you've been creeping up, so they're like, we're getting that money.
It's because exactly. Hey, we had to pass up on a year of touring, so we got to get it all out of you now. But I think that's just
not to steer the ship again, but I'll just throw this out real quick. But it's better if we go off ship. But my mom was actually a wrestling fan in my house. Like my dad I didn't do this on purpose, but looking back, he was kind of a gauge of what was really working, because if he liked something, it was like, oh, I remember like, looking like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like, but he had like weird taste. Like, but he also like if something looked good, like example, we watched, I remember the first in the AWA, the Bockwinkel Kurt Hennig match where they went an hour. Yeah. And my dad was like, well, that's a fucking match. I remember him saying it as like a kid, like, that's a fucking match. And I'm like, all right. But then I remember like the Black Scorpion shit was happening, and Ric Flair's like doing the thing where they're doing the magic and the tigers, and my dad's like, what the fuck is this? And he's walking out the room. Yeah. I'm like, okay. So looking back, like that was the gauge,
I think we were conditioned, like at least in my family, like we were conditioned that if a match was long, it was great. So Sting versus Ric Flair, Clash of Champions, still one of my top 3 favorite matches of all time. My dad loved that match. Same with Flair Steamboat, the 2 out of 3 falls. The Clash of Champions the following year.
Yeah.
My buddy Danny came by. He did not watch wrestling, and he watched that with me. He's like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life." I'm like, "Yeah, no shit. You should watch it more often." He never did again, but but he did that.
Yeah, that too. Flair Funk '89, New York Knockout. Some of those classes.
Oh, the best.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do an episode where we just talk about Ric Flair, Terry Funk for like 4 hours.
Oh, dude, that '89. Like I moved from New Jersey to Connecticut, and we had TBS up here, but not where I was from. And that happened to be right when Flair and Funk were getting rolling. And I'm like, holy shit, this is my favorite time in wrestling history looking back at it.
'89 was pretty amazing because you had in WWF. See, I hear people say they were getting sick of Hogan in '89. I loved Hogan in '89. I hated him in '85, '86, '87. 88, 89, 90, I loved Hogan. I think he was like cheating more often because he'd like do back rakes, and he's just like really more of a badass. And he's great. What the hell did I say? I don't remember. Say something, Joe. I'm sorry. I'm losing.
Did you watch this Josh Alexander TJP Iron Man match on Before the Impact a couple weeks ago?
No, I did not. Alexander TJP. It was on Impact.
It was on the Impact, the pre-show, I believe, right, Dave?
It started on the pre-show, and then they did a thing to get people to watch the pre-show. It started on the pre-show, and then it finished on the beginning of Impact. So it was like an hour Iron Man match. Yeah.
I'll go back and watch because, believe it or not, I am a subscriber to Impact Plus. I don't just stream it for free like the Jaworskis of the world. I actually pay my $6 every month for Impact Plus. And Impact, it's awesome. While my dad was on hospice, of course you do.
He felt hard times. Hard times, baby. I had to help my man.
That's how you're able to afford all this equipment. You save money by not paying for Impact Plus.
Zaucha's about to go all dad on me. Like, you got to support the art, brother.
I'm throwing out my Disney Plus pass, too. I'm like, hey, man, watch it for the kids.
Let's watch. But the last like couple weeks, my dad was in hospice, like leading up to before he died. Like I just put Impact Plus on for him all the time. He was so out of it. It's not like he was getting up saying, "Oh, it's Ultimate X." He was like out of it. But I figure like, okay, something familiar sounding to him would be like soothing, I guess. Like the last couple of days he was alive. Like I read, I haven't finished reading yet. The George Shire book, like History of Minneapolis Wrestling or Minnesota Wrestling. So I was like reading stuff about like the shit that he remembered. And then like he died. I'm like, I haven't gone back to reading it. It's been like, it's hard. Like I went in his room finally the other day, like a couple weeks ago, thinking it was gonna be like this big like emotional experience. And I went down there. I'm like, okay, I guess this is how it is. How
long has it been? Not to get too emotional. How long has it been? Because my dad passed away in like 2012, and I want to say it's about a year though. Like you start to kind of get that where you
all three of our dads died.
We talked about this before. I'm like, so what are we calling this? The 3 dead dads, bro? What the fuck is this episode anyway?
Yeah, this whole idea for this episode started as a joke because I'm like, hey Dave, let's do a show on Father's Day.
Let's talk about Joe's sense of humor for a moment.
Dad, like,
I'm gonna tell
we got nothing going on.
Just so I tell a long story. We're not gonna mention the kid's name too, but fucking Joe wants to do this. He's like, and then my buddy's father just passed away. It passed away 3 days ago. I'm like, Joe, we're not gonna invite him on. I'm like, just get that out of your head. Like,
and the worst part of it was like a heart attack in a golf cart that hit a tree. So I'm like, he Randy Savaged it. Right. Not even thinking like that might not be the thing you want to hear when somebody describes
too much wrestling for you.
Joe stuff we got.
But actually, to get to the hospice thing, when my dad was in hospice, they played a lot of country music for him.
Yeah.
So
we
first
did that
time,
too. Yeah.
The first time we had to go down there, like, and sit in that room, we're sitting there, and they're playing this Johnny Cash Hiawatha song. And I'm sitting there for what felt like 20 minutes, and I go, how fucking long is this song? And we look, they just had the one track on repeat. So I'm wondering, like, if my dad in that hospice state is like, hit the skip button.
Somebody, can you hit skip, please? That'd be great. Thanks. Is there a
Yeah,
shuffle
like, we
button?
don't want to hear the same depressing song about an Indian on repeat.
Just kill me now, okay?
This is not a Russell story, but you guys might be able to relate to this. Chris, especially, remember when, like, I don't know about you in your area, but I remember, like, when pay-per-view channels first came to our area, and they'd only have, like, maybe a few movies, and they rewind the fucking commercials constantly. And so they would have, like, an all-day movie. They would play, like, an all-day movie. And I remember my dad one time, he fucking watched some all-day movie, and he worked a bunch of jobs. So he'd go take a nap in the middle of it. And he's like, all right, I'm going to watch this. Like, then he'd wake up and be in the middle of it. And then he'd come back and nap again. You're like, how was this fucking movie? It's been playing all day, Dad. You keep running into there. He's like getting a second VHS tape to record it. He's like, I don't know how long this movie is.
It's like Gone with the Wind, 50 cents. That's great.
It was funny because, like, as, like, spending time with my dad, I couldn't tell you 100% what he liked because he would listen to country music radio all day, and then I'd ask him about a question about a song, and he goes, oh, this shit, I don't like this. I have it on in the background. I'm like, you don't like it, but you spend all day with it? Like, to me, that was crazy. But he was also an older guy. He had, like, this intelligence where he could fix anything. So, like, especially when we were on vacation in Maine, he's fixing up the cabin. He would just sit there with the music, smoking cigarettes, having a couple beers, going, how the fuck am I going to fix this toilet?
Yeah.
And he would get it done, like, listening to something he didn't like. So that's wild for me, thinking I spend all this time watching things I like.
Right. And that's the thing, like, with my dad, like, I can never say, who was your favorite singer? He wouldn't know. He's like, I don't know. Who's your favorite band? I don't know. Like, I don't think he knew, like, pop culture stuff. Like, it was, like, 2 years after Trump was president that he realized Trump was president. He's like, who's president? I'm like, Donald Trump. He's like, oh, the guy from the show? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right. he's like, all right. He didn't care, and neither did I. And he's like when what's his nuts? Bruce Jenner was converting, or whatever they call it, to Caitlyn. He's like watching. His eyesight was still okay at the time, and we're sitting in my old apartment before we moved out here. And he's like, so Bruce Jenner is a woman now. I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. And then that was it. I'm like, I realized how woke you were, Dad. You know, it's like,
it's funny, right? Because it's like, I think that's the best answer a lot of times too. Like, it really is. Just don't give a fuck.
Like, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to understand what they call themselves now, and we're rolling with that.
Exactly. What do you want to be known as? Okay, thank you. And then we just move on with our lives. Because, like, I posted on Facebook a while ago, like, my daughter came out to us like last year, and they're like, I'm non-binary. We're like, all right. And like, and I go by they, them. I'm paraphrasing. And we're like, all right, I guess, okay. And it's like, I could be like, well, it's just the things they're going through. But it's like, well, it's the worst that could happen if I say, yeah, that's fine. You're they, them now, and just go with it. Nothing. Nobody's gonna get harmed. But a lot of people, but they would get harmed if I was like, no, you're a fucking girl. You know, it doesn't. Who's that help? That doesn't help anybody. So it's like, all right, well, you're they, them. I don't care. Just do your homework.
Right.
Which they don't.
And that's kind of why we're getting to the heart of the subject. We wanted to have you on because the idea started as a dead dad segment, but then you're such a great dad. You're back in the dad game now. How is it to be raising a little one again?
That's fine. I mean, whatever. It's fine. So I don't want to get into all the specifics of this story because I don't know that it's for me to tell. But basically, we have a toddler staying with us now, and he's been with us since March, and he's fine. He's like he's pretty low maintenance. He's getting so big so fast. He'll be 2 next month. His birthday is the same day that Dusty Rhodes beat Ric Flair for the NWA title at the Great American Bash, July 26th. Because when my wife told me that, I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be Ric Flair. She's like, you know what? It's not everything's about wrestling, Chris.
How many kids do you have, Chris?
Now 3.
3. Okay.
So I got 14, 12, and a soon-to-be 2-year-old.
All right. Selfish note here. Selfish question. All right. Might be soon dating a woman with 5 kids. Any advice? any pointers?
Do you have kids of your own or no?
No,
do you have kids of your own?
You know.
Okay. How old's their oldest? How old's their oldest?
She has 2 twins. They're 14-year-old girls.
Okay. Old enough to give Dave the stink eye when he's coming around more often.
Yeah.
Just don't try.
Who the fuck is this guy?
Just don't try to. Keep in mind, all these kids are mine, so it's hard for me to.
Right.
I
think you're about to say what I'm thinking, though, so it's good.
Don't try too hard. Don't try too hard. Don't be like, hey, let's be friends. Don't. Yeah. If they don't want to hang out with you, then they don't.
That's what eventually, I kind of thought.
Yeah. Eventually, they may warm up to you and then do whatever, or maybe they never will. I don't know.
Right.
But I would say don't go overboard. Don't show them. Be like, we're going to get a new Xbox. It's like, if you're going to do that, get one for me. Because I will appreciate it. I will greatly appreciate it. But yeah, that would be my advice. Just don't try to. And I'm the same way with Bryson. It's like, because I'm not his father per se.
Right.
But I kind of let him. I mean, he treats us like we're his parents, so it's pretty easy. And again, he's so small, like he's not even 2. So
I look at it as just go in, try to be a good person, but lay back and treat anybody like you would normally, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If you're fine, like if you're a good guy, they're gonna know. Like if you're being a fake, and I don't think you would be, but if you're being a fake, kids are really smart. Yeah. They're a lot smarter than we are. They can pick up when someone's a scumbag. I can't. To this day, I have the worst judge of character. You can be a complete piece of shit. I'm like, but their profile picture is nice. You know what I mean? I just
motherfucker got some good teeth. He can't be that
right. Guy. I always try to find good. I don't care who it is. Yeah. I have a lot of questionable Facebook friends. I'm like, but they messaged me when my dad died, so I put a lot. It's like you may be a complete piece of shit, but you thought enough to do that, so you're fine by me. Unless you say something really, really bad, then you're fine. So
now, is it wild seeing kind of your kids like things that your kids do that you're like, wow, that's obviously in the genes? Because you've said before you'll catch like your youngest saying stuff that your dad would say.
So my son. So my oldest son, he's 14. He when Bryson was doing something, and Aiden's like, "Hey, get over here, young feller," which is exactly what my dad used to say to him when he was like a kid. And I'm like, you don't even realize that Paul talked to you like that. He's like, what? I don't know. Because he just, I think it was the day before my dad died. We all go downstairs. It's me, River, and Aiden. And, River and I are crying. And Aiden's just not he just doesn't have that in him. And he's just almost not in denial, but he just copes with things differently. So I'm like, this probably be the last time you guys see him alive. So, say goodbye or whatever. We all go to walk out. Aiden turns to my dad and goes, bye. And not even being funny. He's just, bye.
Right.
And I can't get mad. It's like, well, how people cope with this stuff is how they cope with it. There's no right or wrong way, in my opinion, unless you're just a complete garbage human being.
Yeah.
If you cope with it if you cope with it with humor, that's fine. If you cope with it by crying all the time, that's fine too. However you get through it is just how you get through it.
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day when me and my brother were in the ICU, probably one of the last times we saw my dad in the hospital, like when there was still hope, they did something where we had to step outside. So, we're in this little kind of hallway just laughing. And my mom's like, what's so funny? I'm like, oh, we were talking about taking the Trail of Tears to go get to the car. And my mom's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm like, yeah, because most people cry from their room all the way to the elevator. So that's why it's
great. And then you had to explain it, which made it even worse.
Yeah, and she's just like, what the fuck? And I'm like, how else do you want us to handle this? Do you want us to be breaking down? I'm the type of person, I might, you're not going to see it. Even my mom, she would cry around us, and I'm like, well, my job is to be here for you, so you don't need to hear my bullshit.
Yeah, the thing with me is I'll cry. I'm not going to cry today, but I'll cry anytime in front of anybody. I don't care. When the day after he died, I want to reiterate this. Some people post stuff on Facebook, and they're full of shit. Anything I post on Facebook that I said or did is a 100% shoot, as we say in the wrestling biz. I went to Meyer the day after my dad died, and I'm like buying like, you know, cakes and stuff because I'm fat, right? And I make my way over by the patio furniture, and I'm looking at a patio set, and it had 4 chairs. I'm like, oh, we need one more for Dad. And then I'm like, oh, fuck. And I start crying. I'm walking through Meijer, just holding a bunch of cakes, just there crying. It's like, it's so ridiculous, but it's hilarious. It's like, it's like, I don't, again, how you deal with it. Like, one of my friends, I'm not going to mention who it is, so I don't want to get any free publicity, but he's like, he would message me like all the time. He's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, I know you're not okay. I'm like, well, I'm not okay, but I'm okay because I shouldn't be okay because my dad just died.
Right.
So I should be crying. I should be beside myself, but that's fine. I'm expecting that. I think because a lot of people say, even if you're prepared, you're never really prepared.
Right.
The day my dad moved in with us, which was in like February of 2015, the day he moved in was the day I started preparing for him to die. Because it's like, well, he ain't moving back out. He's gonna die living with us. So I was prepared for that. I was not prepared for the aftermath. I thought it'd be rough and I'd be fine. It's still not. It's been it'll be 2 months on like Monday or something. It's still, it's not easy. You guys know. I mean, you guys lost your dad too. I didn't. How did your dad die?
I'm going on 10 years, so it's been a while for me. But I will say this too before I would say actually I cried so fucking much, but not at the funeral because I was so fucking cried out at that point for a little bit. It just happened to be the one time I was able to get in the zone. So
to keep it together, right?
Yeah, because it's like you see what you're saying. It's like there's no fucking manual. You just And I have a best friend who, like me, it was like maybe a couple month process. It was like a stroke. This all happened, and then when my best friend, like his dad, literally had a blockage in an artery. They brought him to the hospital. He died that day. So it's like fuck. That to me is even worse. But so it started with, we'll say, complications of a stroke. It started with a stroke, but then there were other issues, and we just sat there, and he said he never wanted to be kept alive. Right?
Same thing. So, most people do. Most people don't want to be hooked to a machine.
No,
I do. Hook me up for 100 years.
I'm sticking around in case they figure something out.
Yeah, my dad was the same way. Like when my mom told me that the hospital said there was nothing more they could do, she goes, well, what now? I go, what the fuck do you mean, what now? Like, we know what he wanted. We just got to get ready for that landslide. And with hospice, you're like, my mom explained what it was. So I'm like, all right, how long? And she goes, could be days, could be weeks.
Yeah.
And then when he got there, they were like, could be days, could be hours. And I'm like, oh shit. So no matter how ready you are for it, you're not ready.
This might be a little dark. I'm just curious because it's popping in my head. I actually don't mean to be dark. I was in the room when my dad took his last breath. I don't know if you guys were. Yeah. And I
was not.
Okay. All right. I have no one to ask about this then. Because I was wondering, for me, it was almost like this. My brother called it like he wondered if it was like the flash of your life because it was like this great almost inhale. Like so he was kind of quiet, everything. And then it was like, and then it was like freaked us the fuck out too. Because I'm like, what the fuck was that? Like, is he alive? What's going on? Oh, that was his last breath. Like, holy shit. Yeah. So I don't know. You guys ain't gonna help me out with
that. Was he like heavily sedated or was he just like regular?
They were sedating him constantly because the pain and everything like that too. He was a fucking. I'm not even trying to say everybody's, I'm sure, has their own thing, but he was he'd been in a couple wars. He'd been to Vietnam, Korea, like 2 tours of Vietnam. And so as a fucking gag when he was a kid, I didn't think nothing at the time. He would take like a little lit cigarette and he would like hold the lit part in his hand, hold it there. He's like, see, Dave. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, fuck, how did you do that shit? Like, you know what I mean? But so
I think our dads came from a time when men were fucking maniacs. Like, Chris has told multiple wild stories about his dad's younger days.
There was one time. Now I'll tell this story. So I might be combining 2 stories, from one that I heard from my mother and one that I heard from somebody else in the family. But here's the gist of it. So this had to be in like the 60s or 70s. My dad was like at a bar with maybe my mom. I don't know. A bar, and he got into it with some guy, He either told my mom to shut up or something else happened. I can't remember. There's so many stories about him just doing crazy stuff. And the guy like sucker punched him. He probably didn't sucker punch. My dad probably thinks he sucker punched, but he probably just punched him in the face. And my dad grabs him in a headlock, and he starts to like take him over by like the window, and he's like trying to like run his head into the window, which I just thinking like logistically, it's like, who are you really hurting when you do that? You know,
yeah, you're gonna hurt yourself just as much.
Right. So then the cops eventually come. So I think it turned into like a bit. I think there were a lot of people fighting. So cops show up, and they got my dad and everybody like up against the wall, and the guy punches my dad again, and my dad grabs him again. He's like trying to put him through the window. And my mother later goes to him. She's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I was trying to put his head through the window, and then I was going to drop down." And she's like, "So you're going to decapitate him, basically?" And he's like, "I didn't start it." It's like, yeah, and he's like, all right, and just like, and I did, and my mother tended to embellish stuff. So finally, last year, maybe before my dad got sick, me, the kids, Shannon, and my dad are all sitting up here eating, and I go to my dad. I'm like, "Dad, do you remember ever trying to kill somebody in a bar?" I didn't even finish the sentence, and he goes, "Yep."
Oh,
and that's it. He didn't say anything, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, and that's when I knew that it was legit, because he wasn't like, "Oh yeah, I'd be the." He's just like, "Yep." He's like a sociopath. He's like, "Yep."
I'm not trying to like criticize, because my dad also came from like an abusive background and a lot of stuff too, dude. And it was just so different. We're evolving. Like back in the day, like people might not want to hear this. They got rid of pets by throwing them in a fucking bag and throwing them in the lake sometimes, and that was normal.
Funny you say that.
Yes.
Funny story. So it's not funny. I have dogs. It is funny. Right. So I was reading, I think it was Jim Ross's book where he talked about having to drown puppies. Okay. So my dad grew up on a farm, and we're all sitting up here. This is a few years ago. And I go to my dad. I'm like, "Dad, did you ever have to drown puppies to like control the population?" Like, drown them? No, I never drowned them. I'm like, "Oh, thank God." He goes, "We just killed them." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I feel much better now. But that's the thing. You never want to use the excuse of it was a different time, but it was a different time.
Sure,
it was.
So
people didn't. They didn't have that type of like thought. Like, hey, we probably shouldn't kill animals, but that's just how it was done. I'm not saying it's okay.
Yeah, that's how my dad took care of one of our older dogs. I think after it attacked a delivery driver, and I was like, "Oh shit!" But they just came from, like you said, a different time, and I'm sure it bugged him, but it was one of those things. He's like, "I'm a fucking man. I got to take care of this," and that's how I'm gonna
take care of it.
Dude, this is totally off the subject, and I know we probably. But one more thing, like talk about
no such thing. There's no such thing as off the subject.
Not now, we're fucking way off there now. But I was talking. I got a friend. He's younger. He's like 26. He's an engineer at EB. He helps me around the house and shit. I knew his father, and his father was like one of the beer representatives, and then he worked stock at one of my stores when I was in the store. Anyway, we're bullshitting the other day. He comes up with stuff, and I think it was like about a month ago, actually. He's looking to sell his house. He's looking to quit his job. He's going to start like a business stuff. And I said, "That's awesome." I said, "Why are you doing all this stuff?" He said, "I know too many people in their 40s that aren't fucking happy what they do, and I don't want to be that guy at 26. I said, "Good."
Nice.
I said, "So why'd you be an engineer anyway?" And he said, "I just picked something." And I said, "Let me guess, you had to talk with your dad." And I said his response was probably, "Good money in that." And that was the end of the fucking conversation, because that's all
it. Yep.
we had talked about back then. Now it's like, man, I kind of want to enjoy. I mean, that money, great too, but I kind of want to like what I fucking do too.
Yeah, it's a different. Again, it's a different time. I think that more people are looking at it like, "Hey, I want to get enjoyment out of what I do in my career." Yeah. I don't look at it that way.
Sure.
It's just my personal opinion. I just want to, and not that I'm making millions of dollars, but I want to make decent money. And I do like working at a grocery store. I made it fine. I'm sure my dad did not like climbing up on a roof every fucking day, because I'm sure it got kind of hot up there to the point where he was permanently tan. And I remember when I was like a kid, because this may come as a surprise, I was not a very smart person when I was a youngster. And I go to him like, "Dad, are you black?" He's like, "What? No, I'm not black. What the fuck?" I'm like, "Well, you're so dark." He's like, "I'm on the." "No, I'm not black." What? And I'm like, okay. And I just, for me, it was just, oh, okay. I'm like, I didn't know. I'm like, oh, I guess my dad's black. I don't know why I'm so fucking white. I guess my dad's black now.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. He's black.
He's black.
And
We're
now
a
we're raising,
multicultural family.
right. And now we're raising a biracial kid. So I was like, oh, I'm black now. I gotta go listen to Snoop Dogg now.
It all came back around. Like, that's one thing I'm glad my dad always taught me. Whenever I would run something by him, he would just like stay quiet about it, and then he'd be like,
hey.
all right, what's that? Or like I'd run something by him and he'd be like, oh, how do you feel about that? And I didn't realize, like, dude's teaching me intuition. He's teaching me how to be happy by something doesn't feel right. Maybe it's not right for you.
Yeah. See, and my dad was never like, and I posted this on Facebook like before he died, because I knew it was probably going to be pretty soon. Like, he was never like, here, I'm going to teach this. Here, I'm going to teach you this. I don't think he ever taught me anything. And that's not a knock on him. I think he just wanted to learn. Like when I was going to college, and when I say college, I was going to like a junior college taking a super class I didn't care about. The Clash of the Champions was on that night where Hogan was making his debut. So I'm like, hey, Dad, should I drop out of college and just stay home and watch wrestling? He's like, I don't care if you want to. I'm like, all right, thanks. Thanks for that morsels of wisdom. But I was like 20, and like maybe he thought at that point, hey, figure it out on your own, which is not necessarily bad advice. No. You know, he's just like, figure it out. So my dad was not, again, he was not like other fathers. He didn't play ball with us. He was, he was 40 when I was born. So, he was already old-ish.
Same. When I was 40.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like, yeah. So he's like, he didn't say like, I love you. He never did stuff like that. Same. But it was fine. Like never bothered me. I was never like, oh, Dad would love it. I never thought of it like that. And like, even towards the end, like my brother Ron is staying with us now. And every night, or not every night, but like I would go downstairs, feed my dad, change his diaper, which is a lot of fun. Put on whatever shoot interview he wanted to watch. And then I'm like, all right, I love you, Dad. He's like, all right. My brother Ron is like, he's never going to say it. He's never going to say it. I'm like, I don't care if he doesn't say it. I want him to know. And I never. Yeah. You hear kids like, oh, my father never told me. It's like, they tell you in other ways. That's all.
I didn't say
he was there.
Yeah. It got to the point when I got older, I wanted to say it once in a while. And I can't remember if he kind of nodded his head or what, but it was like, all right, that's good enough for me.
That's what he did. And I'm fine with it. Like I said, every parent, unless you're just like a terrible parent where you like murder your kids, which is obviously that's an extreme case. But unless you're an awful parent, they just show you they love you in different ways. Like my mother, like I had a lot of like, I don't even know why. So like my mom died in 2003. And then like as I got, and I was already 29 at the time. So I like as I got older and my kids started growing up, I started to have like a lot of like, as we say in the wrestling biz, heat with my mother. And I don't even know why, because she was an asshole sometimes, but it's like, and that's what having my dad died, that did help me mend that fence, even though she's been gone almost 20 years. Like internally, I needed to work through that for whatever reason. Like, I don't know why we had heat with her, but it's like anything I asked for, and I mean anything I asked for, I got. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If I said, hey, hey, Dave got for this conversation. Oh, there he is.
I'm back. Yeah, I know.
like he's frozen. But I'd be like, hey, like she got me a Nintendo. She got me a Nintendo and Atari in the same year for Christmas. Like, she got me a Sega Master System. The one thing she didn't get me was a robot, which I asked for in like 82, and she still got me a robot, just not the robot that I asked for. She still got me everything. It's like, why would I be mad about anything? Why would I be mad about anything? What did she do that was so wrong? Other than be a dick sometimes. Listen, I'm sure my kids think I'm a dick sometimes too, but I like to think I'm a decent parent. So that helps. So when my dad died, I was able to kind of, because my dad was perfect. Like he never did anything wrong in my opinion. But when he was gone, it's like it helped me rectify that relationship that I had with my mother. So that was a plus. Everything else is a minus, but that part was a plus at least.
How lucky are all of us anyway, too, to be raised by three old white men, and none of us are racist.
Yeah.
Right,
seriously, no kidding.
Yeah.
I think they set enough of an example where we're like, we're not going to be that.
We're not gonna be like that.
Yeah.
Say, I don't know who's gonna be seeing this, but we went to North Carolina a couple years ago with my brother Ron, and my dad blurted out the
Hard R too and everything.
and my kids busted out laughing, and
Oh,
my
shit.
wife is like, my wife looked at my son. She's like, "Why are you laughing?" He's like, "I'm not laughing because he said that. I'm laughing because he said it just like he was just completely normal conversation."
Right.
Just
right,
true.
right.
And this sounds, and I recognize that I'm making excuses. I sometimes think that he didn't need to be racist. It's a racist thing to say. Don't send me a bunch of angry tweets or whatever. But I think for him, it was just like another word. It's wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's wrong. But I think he was just kind of like, blah, blah, blah. So
It was a word they had grown up with and was common use and fine when they were younger, but
and Shannon
still a part of them.
She was beside herself. She was so mad, and I'm like, Dad, you can't say that anymore.
Yeah.
You should have said it in the 50s and 60s, but you really shouldn't say it in
See,
2019 or 20.
I was lucky. He wasn't, the only racist shit he said, it was nothing against Africa, was from the war. So he'd say things like, I didn't get it as a kid. I'm like, who the fuck is Charlie?
I was like, he's Charlie's.
I'm like, what the hell's going on? Sounds like he was a bad dude now. Now they find out, oh, that's what they said. Okay, all right.
Joe was like, "Oh, we're losing all our sponsors right now."
We gotta
No,
go.
like
We're out of time.
I remember one time my dad. I was watching because I love NBA. I love basketball. He just walked by the TV and the Edward and walked the other way, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like, Dad, it's a different time. You can't be doing that. Yeah. But then I'm like, I'm going to have a hilarious story in about 10 years. Like, once this is blown over, that's going to be comedy gold.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing. And we'll go back to the dad stuff, but it's like now it's like anytime you say something or if you've ever said anything questionable, it's like you're called to task to it so bad. Like it's like you can never get from it. It's like, listen, people make mistakes. And then just let them make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes. I'm going to say something sexist. I'm going to say something anti-Semitic. I'm going to say something racist at some point. We're doing it today. I'm not saying I want to. Just saying it's going to happen. It's going to. So then, by that token, I should never. It's like these people lose their jobs, and they expect them to like never get jobs again. It's like, oh, they get fired. It's like, okay, well, how are they going to pay bills? You know what I mean? It's like, there should be some people be held accountable. But if you said something 10, 15 years ago on Twitter,
right?
Really, we really need to read that. And who has the time to look that up besides David Vixen's fan? You know what I mean?
Yeah, when he's researching something. Now, Chris, we've gone far longer than we usually do, so I wanted to end on a high note. I saw you have a wrestling championship that.
Yeah, I purposely sat because I knew you wanted to see it, so I purposely sat close to it. All right, so I'll show this to you in increments. So as some backstory, I'm in this Cubs group. Now, I don't even like baseball, but my best friend likes baseball, and he hosts a podcast called the San Ranto Show instead of Ron Santo. Okay, so nice. I'm in the San Ranto group, and all everybody does is just complain about everything. Every time the Cubs make a mistake, they're like, "Oh, fuck the Cubs." It's kind of like an inside joke. So if you're new to the group, you usually go in there like, "Oh, you need to be nicer to the Cubs." I'm like, that's not how this group works. That's not how this works. But anyway, out of that group, they started a page for any time somebody in the group loses a parent or whatever, they like raise money and do whatever.
Oh, that's cool.
So they got. So I'll give you the whole thing and then I'll show you two in pieces. So they did a belt for my father. So you kind of can see the lighting doesn't help. So let me get closer. I've never worked a camera before.
Okay.
Yeah, as closer you get, you can see it's an old time picture of Big Al. I'm assuming in the Navy.
In the Navy, yeah. So then they got this one with you can probably barely see this. So it's me, my dad, and Jim Cornette.
Oh yeah, you can make
my
out
apologies
in the top there,
and me sadly. And there's my dad.
Oh, there's that. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. My sincere apologies. I didn't know that. I would let the shade down, but we don't have one. So we had one, then we got dogs. And then
I know. I thought about asking about it, and then I didn't think about how it would videotape either.
The lighting
but
would look.
Each
That's
of
okay.
the plates has different pictures,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, so that's him with my 2 kids when they were real little. That's him and I giving the finger. Sorry, I'm terrible with.
Yeah, he's wearing a Chicago Bears jersey.
Bears. Yep. And this one you can barely tell, so I'll do my best. They drew a pit. My dad used to drink Old Style, and they drew a thing called Al Style, and so it's pretty sweet. And then it says on here, I can't read it, but it says it's like New World Croissant or something on here. It says New World Order, so it's all like wrestling tied.
Yeah.
So my wife, I get home from work and there's a box on the table, and it says like something belts. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And she's like, hold on, don't open it. And then she like gets the phone out and she like starts to film me. I'm like, what the fuck? And I literally had no idea what the fuck. I pull this out and I look at this. I almost started crying. I'm like, turn the fucking camera off now. Because not because I don't want to cry in front of people, but I don't want to seem like it was like planned.
Right.
Anytime I see videos like that, I'm like, is this on the up and up, or did they just do this for show? But yeah, so we got this, and then they're also going to be doing like a painting of that Al Style can. I haven't got it yet, but that's coming. And then they donate money to this place called Boys Town in Nebraska, which is for not orphan kids, but like underprivileged kids. You hear Boys Town, you think it's like a gay area, but it's not. Or maybe it is now. I don't know. They did a donation of that, so they went well above and beyond anything I would have expected them to do. So yeah, it's a good keepsake or whatever.
And that's wild that friends that you've never met in a Facebook group would do that for you.
Yeah,
aside from all the reaching out and like just through wrestling podcasts, we've all become familiar with each other and friends, and it's wild how things can come around like that. Now we're gonna end the show here in a minute, but Chris,
I still have more to say, so let's go. I'm just kidding.
What advice do you have what fatherly advice can you give people? And we'll end on that note.
As a father or as a son, or both, or neither?
As a father.
Yeah.
As a father, listen to your kids. Listen to your kids. I'm not saying you need to do whatever they want or whatever, but make sure you listen. Don't just hear them and not pay attention. You got to listen to your kids. Always ask them how they're doing. And it's hard to say because there's no manual. Just like about everything else, there's no manual. Just be involved. Being present is 90% of the battle. When I worked overnights, like I took my kids to every parent teacher conference. I went to all that shit, which was great because I was home all day. I should have been sleeping, but I was doing other stuff. If you're involved, especially as a dad, it's harder for dads than moms because kids have a greater connection to their mother just like biologically because they were raised in their mother's stomach for 9 months or however long it takes, 9 months. So just being involved as a father goes a long way. And that's why I've always tried to be like involved in everything with them. Now they're a little older and they don't give a shit about us anymore. But
yeah, now they're becoming less involved.
They're the ones that aren't involved anymore. Exactly. But yeah, just be involved, do stuff with them. I had friends that like I'd be like, hey, why don't you they had kids. I'm like, hey, why don't you come by after your wife gets home from work or whatever. Like, oh, I had my kid all day. I'm like, okay, well, you can still bring them with over here. It's fine, and that would annoy the shit out of me. Like, oh, I have my kids. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not doing crack. I just want to come by and play Xbox,
Right.
So my kids, I take my kids everywhere. I don't care where it is. I'm like, oh, I bring the kids. I'll bring the kids because it's like now again, not so much now because they're bigger. When they were little, I took them everywhere, and then you teach them how to get out of the house too.
Sure, that makes sense.
So that's the best thing. Just be involved and be present. That's the best advice. Just be present, and then nothing bad can come from being present, but a lot of bad can come from not being present. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%.
So if you're there, you're already halfway there. And then sometimes you can be right, your kids are still assholes. Like my oldest son, he's a little douchebag,
He's watching off camera, just giving you the finger.
I've seen him. He's not. He's playing. He's on his gaming PC.
Fucking dad talking about wrestling.
Yeah, seriously. He's like, God, you still watch this shit? But he goes every time I go to a show. We went to the MLW pay-per-view a couple years ago. We met Jushin Liger, and I told my kids, I'm like, you may not understand, but you're really meeting somebody that's really a big deal in this world. And then I took my son to meet Ricky Steamboat a few years ago. Like, I know you don't watch this shit. I know you think it's stupid, but this is one of the best to ever get in the ring here. Same thing with, we met Road Warrior Animal. And I'm like, same thing. Like, you may not care, but this guy changed professional wrestling. And he really did. He completely changed the game. He may have somebody had somebody.
Wrestling Tees, Legion of Doom shit.
There you go. I thought that's what that was. So, yeah, it's like you guys may not get this, but this is really big. To a bunch of nerds like us, this is a big deal, especially Jushin Liger. It's like he hangs out in Chicago. It's like, holy shit, we're going to meet Jushin Thunder Liger. And honestly, I can count on my hand how many Jushin Thunder Liger matches I see, probably 10, and probably all like here in the United States. But still, you can't deny what an impact he had on what we see today with a lot of the cruiserweights and stuff.
1,000%.
100%. And that's a good place to end the show. So, Chris, thanks for joining us. We got to have you on again because obviously you've got plenty to say, but I thought it'd be a nice time to kind of just pay tribute to our dads. And like, if you follow Chris on Facebook, you've seen the saga from like when he got sick. And then around the same time, you started taking care of Bryson. So it's that weird, like full circle. You're seeing your dad go, but you're also going through the fatherly process again.
Right.
So
Yep.
I thought to turn this from a dark joke to an actual heartwarming show. We'd have best dad on the planet, Chris Zaucha.
Come on. I remember when Bryson first came home, my dad was still kind of with, but not really. Yeah, I showed him Bryson. He's like, "Where'd you get him?" I'm like, "Well, man, I really get him anywhere." But yeah, it's true. You see one life end and another one's just work his way up. It's what can you say? It's hard, but you do what you got to do.
Hey,
keeps you busy. That's for sure.
Doing what you do, man. And we will talk to you again later.
All right, man.